Hi everyone, my name is Christoffer Norman. I'm an investor with Northzone Ventures, and with me here today I'm pleased to have Matt Robinson, CEO and the founder of Nested, and one of the strongest entrepreneurs that the British Empire has to offer. Matt, you describe Nested as the next generation real estate agent, but what do you guys actually do?
Good question. I think there's a few levels of answering that, but the first one for us is you look at what customers really want to do and you make it better. So we've got the slide there. It says we let people buy their new home while we sell your old one. But the key for me is there are some good agents, there are many bad agents, but currently the average experience is pretty poor. You speak to people, it's very rare you hear someone who's just bought or sold a house say, you know what, that was a great experience. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make it a great experience for people. But by fundamentally innovating, I think there's lots of cool companies out there. There's online agents, there's people making it cheaper, there's people allowing you to kind of do it yourself, etc. But for me, that's surface level innovation. What we want to do is fundamentally change the market. The biggest problem you have in most markets today is that it's impossible to buy and sell at the same time. We fix that by attaching a finance product to it and allowing people to do that.
Okay, so people generally tend to hate the old generation or the current generation of real estate agents, but looking at your Trustpilot reviews, it seems like people actually like you. Why is that? Why is it such a big difference?
Well, it's nice. I think fundamentally part of that is that's what you have to do. When you want to do something, when you want to break the norm, when you want to come in with something new, the first thing is you have to delight customers. I presume you'll have heard that all day from everyone. I just heard the guys from McMakler saying the same thing. That's just table stakes, right? You have to delight customers. But second, I think that's how you're building your business, by allowing people to do something that they couldn't do before or that they didn't think was possible. And for us, that thing is, I wanted to buy a house. I was unable to sell mine in time. I was going to miss out on it. And suddenly, I can get it. You know, the best stat in our company that always amazes me is when we launched a couple of years ago, I've kind of done this before at Go Cardless. I've done it long enough to know that press launches are always a bit of a damp squib. So I had the whole team and I said, hey guys, don't get excited, nothing's going to happen. You know, all the hard work starts after the press launch. And within 3 days, someone had signed up and agreed to pay us, you know, £10,000, £15,000, whatever it was, to sell their house. Despite the fact that we had a horrific website, it was clear we'd never sold a home before and knew very little about what we were doing. The reason for that was because the pain is so burning that they needed us. They'd fallen in love with the house, they were going to miss out on it, they couldn't get it any other way, and they were prepared to take that leap of faith. And you know, I still have the email today from them saying, hey, we would never have got that house without you. You know, our boys have now got a garden we can run around in, etc., etc. Like, that's fundamentally why I think we have great customer reviews, because we allow people to do something they couldn't otherwise do.
Cool. Yes, so from a customer experience and from customer perspective, I completely get it. Like, okay, so you give me money to buy my next home while you sell the old one. But from your perspective, can this really be a good business? Like, is it a win-win situation?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a hard business, right? There's real risk here. If we didn't have skin in the game, if we didn't have risk, then we wouldn't be being generous enough, frankly. I think it's important to say this came from a personal experience. I was initially buying a house, and I experienced the chain problem myself and could see, like, okay, this is crazy. We know roughly how much this house is worth. We know roughly how long it's going to take to sell. And yet, because it doesn't happen in time, people are missing out. And the house of your dreams comes up quite rarely, particularly in the UK. It's something we get very emotional about. I think that's important. So there's a burning pain, and that's the first thing you need for a model to work. You need a burning pain. But the second side is, I almost think of this Venn diagram of you've got, like, great for the customer, great for the company, and you want to be in that intersecting piece in the middle. And the answer there is there's real risk, but we have to learn to manage it. And there's a number of ways that we do that. But fundamentally, we're still a risk-based business.
Yeah, because we sit here in the PropTech section, but I guess there's you could argue that you're actually just a lending business and a fintech business. And I guess the elephant in the room here is what happens when the market drops. Like, will you go down in flames, Lehman style, or like what will happen?
I was going to say, it's really nice having Chris on stage with me here. It makes it much easier than being up on my own, and then he drops questions like that. No, honestly, like we face real risk, but that means that we have to be very thoughtful about the risk that we're taking. And we do that in a few ways. We have sensible buffers in place to make sure there's protection for ourselves, our financing partners, and for the customer. Effectively, our model makes it mathematically impossible that a Lehman-type scenario would come about. But I think there's a second important point here, which is actually it makes it a really challenging environment to build the business in some respects, because when the market's just going up, right, you can't really lose, it can't go wrong. I suspect you'll mention them at some point, but there are a couple of businesses in the US doing astonishingly well, Open Door and OfferPad, who are in that up market where everything's going brilliantly well. We're doing fantastically well here, however, it's a very different market. I'm sure I don't need to tell anybody here that Brexit's happening in a few months, or may not be happening in a few months, and as a result, the property market is in a challenging place. But what I'm increasingly learning from that is incredibly useful for us. As an entrepreneur, you're always a little bit too ambitious and a little bit too aggressive, and you want to kind of grow as quickly as possible. But when you're facing a challenging market, it makes you be sensible and really build, or in fact, put it a different way, I think tough times breed resilient businesses. And in this market, we're having to think really hard about those risks you're talking about. Whereas, hand on heart, I don't think I could sit here and say I would be thinking as hard about those risks in a different market. So to some extent, I'm obviously very disappointed about the economic environment, et cetera, but it really sets us up to build a resilient model moving forwards.
Yeah. And since you're taking this risk on your books, I think one of the super interesting things about your business is that you're moving from being an agency to actually being the principal, and actually you have a lot of skin in the game to get those homes sold. And can you tell us a bit about your current performance and how you stack up against traditional real estate agents?
For sure. So one, it's all on our site. If you go to our site, something I always wanted to do when we started the business that no one else ever done before. It sounds like a planted question. It wasn't. We publish all the stats of how long it takes us to sell the home, what prices we achieve for it, how close to asking that was, etc.
Why do you do that? Why be so transparent with
because historically, every single agent tells you, I'm going to sell your home for a better price than anybody else. I consistently meet my asking price, and I'm going to sell it quicker than anybody else. And then nobody can provide the proof to back that up. So it just feels obvious to me that in the world we live in, like that's precisely the kind of proof and data set you should be building up to show people that that's the case. And the great thing is we track not just the transactions that we take on, but also the people that don't end up going with us, who end up going with another agent. And we can see that, sadly, what we tell them, where people don't go with us because they think our price is lower than it should be, or they think our asking price or list price is the wrong one, the stats bear out that pretty much every time, that's unfair. 9 times out of 10, we're correct on that. And you see there's a massive difference between the starting price they'll list with another agent versus the one they'll list with us, and therefore the kind of related price drop and movement they have to go through with another agent. So, but back to it, I think that shift you touched upon of agent principal, you see that in a number of industries, and for me it's just a crazy one. In too many industries, for too long, middlemen have been precisely that. They've been a taxman or a toll booth who sit in the middle and they take a fee for something that they know a bit more about than you do. And that's kind of fine if you're adding value, but I think you could do a lot more. And right back to where we started, you said, what do we do that's different to everybody else? I think that there's a lot of movement in this kind of, in particular agency, of online agency, where people say, hey, we're going to do what other people have done, and we're going to allow you to do it a little bit more cheaply, and it'll be almost as good. And what I'm saying is, hey, let's fundamentally add a ton more value. Let's enable you to do things you couldn't do before, and we can charge a fair fee for that. And one of those, I think, is an extremely unsustainable model where, it's an arms race, it's a race to the bottom in terms of fees, arms race in terms of marketing fund. And the second one is a really hard to build sustainable model which adds clear value for customers. And that's the one that I think we're building. And as long as we're doing that, then I think, whatever business you're in, whatever industry you're in, you're going to be extremely successful.
Cool. So just lastly, how do you look at this industry long term, and like 10 years from now, how will people be buying and selling their homes? We just heard from McMakler. We have Purple Bricks here in the UK. We have traditional agents like Foxtons. We have you. Like, how will you see this?
So I promise we finished on time, so I have to answer this one really quickly. I think you've got a lot of people who I would call thin platforms, where they try and do as little as possible, and as a result have very little data or information about what they're doing, what they're enabling, and how they're helping. I call this a fat platform, where because we actually have skin in the game, we collect data around every single thing that's going on because we have to, and we optimize to do those things because we have to. You're going to provide a fundamentally better service. And that means that, for me, it's easier to evolve from a fat platform to providing automated tools and products around that than it is to go from a thin platform to adding more value.
Thank you so much. Our time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, dude. Thanks, guys.
Wonderful.